Hello, my name is Kyle Syrie and I'm working on a project called HushBox. It's specifically to make miners quieter. I'm currently crouched next to mine and I'm guessing that there's going to be some pickup from just how loud these things are. I currently run 7 miners out of my house. Right now there are only 2 of those running. I'm putting the 2 in a new iteration of the product called HushBox to see how effective it is. In the rest of the video, which I'll stitch together later, I'll show some previous iterations, as well as talk about the performance of them and where we currently are. But for right now, I just wanted to introduce myself and then also show the miners in terms of their performance and how loud they are. These will be the 2 that I specifically put in the box and then stick inside of our containment, which is pretty consumer level. It's basically for people who do home mining or who got started after the big Bitcoin surge back in December and are trying to find a solution to quiet things down and also deal with the heat in the coming summer months. So let me turn you around and I'll show you what the miners look like just to prove that I do have them. So we're looking at some miners here. You can tell it's just about as messy as it can get. I've been using this as a workshop space and just haven't had time to clean up yet and make sure that it's presentable. I figure this is probably as bad as it would look in somebody's house. The 2 that I've got running is this one down here, and I've got this one up here running. Both of these are overclocked, so the fans should be running it a little bit higher. This one that I'm currently showing you, this one's running at about 4,000 to 4,200 RPMs on the exhaust fan, and over here this one's in the mid-3s. They're also using 2 different power supplies. I have a bigger, older version of the Bitmain PSU, and this one right here, puts out a lot more noise than the other ones. I think that's because it has variable power instead of being rated specifically for the L3+, but I'm just guessing there. So I'm going to take these 2 things and stick them in a box, show you what that looks like, and then we'll see how it works. Alright, so now you're looking at both of the miners that I showed you before. You can see that this power supply is dramatically larger than the other one. It's about ballparking at 50% bigger. The total depth on the 2 is not that much, but the height and the width is definitely substantial. As it is right now, I'm trying to port in some of the Ethernet and power cables through here. In later models, I'm guessing we're going to move this, but since this is just the 3rd prototype that we tried, I figured that trying to keep it relatively lo-fi and make sure that we have flexibility to move around once we get in there is useful. So I just want to show the cables from the front. It doesn't look super clean, but compared to what it's going to look like for most people, it's significantly cleaner. So from this edge, you can see a bunch of my tools, and it's a nice day, so I got my front door open. But you can see a bunch of a lot of clearance here. You got, this one's currently movable, this shelf, but you could easily fasten it down if you wanted. And there's still enough space for the wires to come in and route around to the hash boards as well as the control board. As we go into different iterations, what I'd like to do is put holes in the wall here so that you can use some sort of pin, sort of like a bookshelf grommet or bookshelf, I think they're actually called bookshelf pins, and you can just stick them right in and move this around. So if you have a GPU rig or you're not using Bitmain and you have a bicol or whatever sort of miner you want, you can move this around and customize it. And even potentially, if you wanted to, you could rotate these guys like this and potentially throw in at least 1 more miner and maybe even up to 2. So for right now, this is where we're at. I'm going to seal her up and take some more video, and then we'll put it in the window and see how it works. Alright, so I got it sealed up, and I can already tell you I made a couple of mistakes, or at least not considerations. So these 2 holes here, you can see that there's a gap in between them. I'll explain that in a minute. But these 2 holes are basically air intake, and the board itself is pretty big. It allows for a sound channel, so as noise is coming off of this fan, basically it's going to reverberate between another board I'll put in and not create a clear exit for sound to come out. So if you're just sitting directly in front of the miner, it's pretty loud, and this would, at least, this is only a 1/4 inch panel, but it does reduce some of that noise. I'm experimenting with different soundproofing that we can put here, but initially I'm more concerned about airflow. so I'm not going to put any of that in until probably a little later this afternoon. You can see that I sealed it up tight. Got some pretty good joints for my workshop, at least. I don't have the greatest tools, which is part of why we're going to do a Kickstarter, I believe. But it gives you an idea that this thing's sealed up pretty tight. It's relatively even. There's your miners. Your board's still doing pretty good. Looks like I could have stood to make it maybe a 1/4 inch wider for a tighter perfect fit, but for a prototype version, I think this looks pretty darn good. All right, just to show you what the front of this looks like. So again, we got this board here with these 2 holes and some room at the top, and then this one's inverted and creates that channel where the sound won't reflect. You can see that I got, well, I'm trying to put it in, and I got some nails here that'll just hold it in for right now. So the next step is the moment of truth. We're gonna see if we can get these things plugged in and working and see how loud it is. All right, so I just got them plugged in. Everything so far so good. They haven't fully kicked into takeoff yet, so they're still running pretty quiet. There we go. That one's talking to us. This one here, I think it's just gonna take a minute. There we go. Singing in unison. Every time you unplug one of these things, you're terrified that it's never going to come back on. And you can see here, I guess while we're waiting for these things to settle down a bit, there's way too much room in it just for 2, but it fits my real small windows perfectly, so I don't have to worry about as much side paneling or anything like that to keep the air out. So this one's engineered for my house, but when we get to production level, we're going to try to fit them to more normalized size windows. Just for right now, for testing and living with the things, comparing the heat output to what it would be normally, this is the best I can do. So I'm going to shut you off and then attach the front panels, and we can get an idea of the decibel difference between open front and closed front. Alright, so we have it installed. I got both front panels on. So I'm just taking this from the back, which again is completely open. So you probably wouldn't want this as a long-term solution, especially if you live in a neighborhood where people like to steal window units. But for right now, for our testing purposes, I'd say it's pretty darn effective. I'm clocking in about 92 decibels. Again, these are overclock machines. They tend to run between 77 and 83 or 84 decibels if you're running them at factory spec. But I favor overclocking because we all know the difficulty is not getting any easier, and it's better to just use the miners while they're still profitable and offload them or switch to a different coin using the same algorithm later on. So I'm going to pause the video for a second and show you the front. Alright, this is the front at about a distance of a foot, and this is clocking in around 57 decibels. So as you get a little bit further out of the room, and excuse my mess, I'm going to try to just show you this. I mean, these wires aren't great, but eventually we'll have a better version of that. Once you get about 6 feet away, you can actually have a normal conversation without feeling like you have to shout over the miners. So I would say that this is, while not perfect, pretty darn good for a prototype. It definitely demonstrates a proof of concept. And just use the same video here to show you that I'm not tailoring it. I'm not using any special equipment. This is just my iPhone, so what you see is what you'd hear in your own house. I'm not using anything fancy at all. But you can hear this. Let's go up about a foot. Now I'm stepping away maybe 3 feet. Let's call that 6 or 7 feet. I'm gonna walk you outside here through my office, get an idea of the ambient air sound. And this is about a foot from the miners. You can see that it's substantially noisier. When I get closer, it gets crazy noisy. We're picking up a lot of the wind too. And This is about 4 or 5 feet away from them. Still, it's a dramatic improvement. Cancels out a lot of those high frequencies and even some of that low fan hum. Instead, what you're hearing is probably about the sound of a pretty loud ceiling fan, or maybe a freestanding swivel fan that you put on the floor. All right, so I've had them running for only 15 minutes, but I think it's still pretty indicative of how they'd run in the long term. I think right now it's about 65 or 70 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so in the summer these things might be running a little hotter, but I've got one with the highest PCB at 44, so the highest temp of the PCB at 44. The highest chip temp is 54, which is well within operating parameters. Let's see. The other one, I've got the highest PCB at 44 and the highest temp on the chip at 52. To give you an idea, I've got one of these hashing at 412, which is about the most I can do without throwing crazy amounts of HWs. And then I got the other one running here at 406. So that's as much as I can overclock these particular two machines. I do have better performers, but one of the reasons I went with this option is the one with the larger power supply is my loudest machine, and I figured that if we went with the loudest one up front, we would be able to then surmise that the ones that are quieter would be more impactful in terms of the design. So in the future we'll have a bit more of a professional looking, or at least professionally attempted video for the HushBox. But right now I've been extremely nervous. I don't know if you can hear it from my voice, but it feels good to finally have a product that works on spec. We just have a couple of considerations on making sure that the cables are routed properly and look clean. I still think they look way better than what it looks like before, but we can definitely optimize that. And the other thing we'll need to take into consideration is the rear, and making sure if we do install a gable fan that if you have a cat and goes up to it, or a kid and they put their fingers in, they don't get amputated, while also still allowing for the proper amount of heat exhaust. So I think right now we're pretty darn close to being able to do a Kickstarter, but there's obviously some small improvements we can make, especially around the amount of sizing, or rather the size of the box, making sure that that works for people's houses that weren't built in 1960 with crazy sliders instead of regular windows that go up and down. So this is, again, Kyle Sirey. I'm the founder of HushBox. I'm just signing off and thanking you for watching.